Hey everybody, Kim here with Little Biz Resources, and today we're going to look at what is a good conversion rate for e-commerce. I know this is a gripping topic, but are you ready?
Bueller.
Now we get this question a lot, usually from people who are just starting out in e-commerce. And when you're first getting started, this is a question that's good to know the answer to, but it's not critical to focus upon, right? And that's because until you get enough sales to draw conclusions, your conversion rate is really an arbitrary number. And you'll understand why by the time we get to the end of this. But it really is, when you're first getting started, this number is not critical to dictating success. Okay, so if you're like, hey, I'm less than the what everybody says I should be at, that's okay when you're first getting started. If you're making sales, you're doing something right, okay? Now, don't use these numbers as a golden rule, but it's something to help you compare your numbers to just to get an idea. And then just know that you can always improve on conversion rates. It's just like, that's the law of sales. You know, you always want your conversion rates higher and higher. Now, conversion rates can vary, and we're going to look at some real numbers, but just know that conversion rate varies for plenty of factors. Quality of traffic is one of them that's my biggest pet peeve. And that's because places like Etsy have recently expanded into really low quality traffic. And so that lowers your conversion rate and is extremely misleading, because if they think they know your audience, but my sister and I joke about this all the time. We're like, why is Etsy paying to be on Wheel of Fortune, right? Well, not be on Wheel of Fortune, but to have their logo and a little slogan mentioned for like 3 seconds during the commercials, where it's next to apps for gambling and travel and everything else. It just, to me, seems like they're not hitting a very good market there. So besides the fact I think it's a huge waste of money, Etsy has obviously expanded into, hey, we're not really sure where our audience is, so let's go everywhere. And that means the quality of traffic is going to be a lot lower. And so our conversion rates on Etsy have plummeted. And that's because of Etsy, right? That's because of them. And so if you don't control your traffic, that's a factor you can't really influence. So if it's on your own website, you can say, look, I'm listing on Facebook and the traffic that's coming in there is horrible. Let me focus on Pinterest because it's better, or vice versa, or whatever it is, right? Then mobile versus desktop visits. Plenty of people think that desktop converts better. This isn't necessarily true anymore. Mobile visits are far surpassing desktop in many industries. So if that's your niche, your product, then you may have better conversions with mobile than with desktop. And you may not even see this until you get enough data. So this is just one of those things to keep in mind, though. Then page elements, load speed, colors, font size, whatever information you put on there. Do you have other ads? Do you have lots of products on there? Is it cluttered? Is it easy to read? Page elements make a big difference. Then the product or the niche. Look, if you have a higher price product, the general rule of thumb is your conversion rate is lower. This isn't always the case. If you can get your quality of traffic right, then you can have the same conversion rate as everybody else. But typically, if you're getting started, then if the higher the price of the product, the lower the conversions. Again, that varies, and that price point can vary as well. A good point on that would be, I think conversion rates on like Amazon, I think they did an analysis a few years ago, and they're like, basically, if it was under $15, you started to lower your conversion rate because the quality of products were lower. And so your people weren't as happy, and there were lots of refunds and blah, blah, blah. But if it was over $15, and between $15 and $25, that was like kind of the sweet spot for a really good conversion rate, just depending on the product again. So this is, you go back to, there's a lot of variables again. So listing details like images, description, videos, if you have blurry images, you're going to have a lower conversion rate for those. If your description doesn't tell them anything, you're going to have a lower conversion rate, even though lots of people buy from images now. If you don't have videos versus other people having videos, there's a lot of different factors that go into this again. Then you've got pricing and competition. So I put these together because if you're the only one that sells a product, you can raise your price pretty high typically if it's in demand. Now, the catch with that is at some point, that price point is more than what people perceive the value of the product. So it's a guessing game, or a testing game really, until you get that price point exactly where you want it. And we've talked about the profit sweet spot in another video, but if you have your pricing correct, you can maximize your profit and your conversion simply because you're the only person. If you have competition and they are cheaper, people are savvy enough now to search and say, hey, I found it cheaper somewhere else. I'm going to get it there. But you can overcome that by having better shipping, better returns. You have reviews and social proof. You have customer service. Customer service alone is going to get you some sales, right? Because that's just the way it is. And I didn't even put customer service on here, but that's one of the things you have to consider. Then shipping would be if you offer free shipping, which I just mentioned, and then returns if you take returns, right? I don't take returns on a lot of my products, and some people won't buy from me because they don't take returns. And I'm like, look, it's a custom product. I'm not taking returns, right? But if you have a problem, I'll work with you. As people will eventually either buy it because you're the only one that has it, or they're not going to buy it because they don't like it, right? So that can affect your conversion rate. Then reviews and social proof. If you don't have reviews on your site for whatever reason, which I don't think I do, I don't like it enabled, then social proof could be things like if they found it or they found comments on social media platforms, that could drive them back to your site to purchase, right? Age of shop can play a role sometimes. And I say this because obviously if somebody's looking at Etsy versus, I don't know, mystore.com, which probably exists, but let's say whatever your shop is.com versus Etsy, they're going to go, hey, you know what? I know Etsy, it's branded. I'm going to buy from there. Sometimes, right? We have had merch lit up for a very short period of time and we've had sales on it. So it's just one of those things, it's not very old. We're still making sales. So the age doesn't necessarily make a difference. It's the comfort or the demand or whatever it is that's related to what you're selling. And then of course there's seasonal, and I put seasonal and demand together, but seasonal would be, of course, there's a demand for it during a specific season, such as Christmas, right? I sell ornaments. They do better at Christmas time. If you're selling pandemic related stuff, they did better during the peak of the pandemic. That's the way seasonal and demand works. Now, how do you calculate conversion rate? So a lot of people understand this, but they don't understand there's multiple conversion rate types, right? So your number of sales divided by total visits equals conversion rate. That's the general rule of thumb for conversion rate. So let's say you have, and we'll pull up a calculator for this. Let's say you have 5,000, or you have 50 sales with 5,000 visits, right? You say 50 divided by 5,000, that's 0.01. That would be 1% conversion rate, okay? That's how that works. Now, the problem is a lot of people will look at their website and say, oh, this is my conversion rate. I'm good or I'm bad. That's not the way it really works, because you have a listing one. So number of sales for a specific listing or product divided by total visits to that listing or product equals the conversion rate for that listing or product, right? And that's important because you can literally have a ton of listings and only a handful of them making sales. In fact, plenty of shops do this, especially online. Then you have your whole website one, which is number of sales for a website versus divided by the total visits to the website. So that's going to be your conversion rate for the website. Again, if you're looking at a conversion rate where you're bringing in traffic to products that either are out of stock, are, they're maybe not quite optimized, and you have ones that aren't selling, that's going to lower your conversion rate. And it's going to make it it's going to be very misleading. So it's good to understand that there's a website conversion rate, because you do want a good website conversion rate. But you also want to make sure that every product on there is making sales and that each product has their own conversion rate. Now, that's not always going to be the case. You're always going to have products that don't sell or don't sell regularly. But you want to make sure that there's a reason why. Like if you have a product on there and it's not selling, is it just because there's too much demand and your price is too high? That's usually what it ends up being. Or is it because people aren't seeing it, right? They don't know you have it. There's a lot of different variables in there again. Now, to get a representative number, like one that really helps you, you need enough data, right? You can't have a conversion rate and say, oh, well, I've sold 5 things and had 500 visits and that's it. That's my conversion rate. Yes, that's your conversion rate, but it's not enough data. Typically, it means you need at least 1,000 visits or more to your site or shop. Now, some places say 500, but it just really depends on how many products you have. I argue that if you don't have a couple hundred visits to each product, that product's conversion rate doesn't mean anything yet, right? You need to have at least enough people in front of it to say, look, you know what? I've had 500 people look at this listing and nobody's made a purchase. Something's wrong. Maybe your buy button isn't working, and maybe it's just your site's ugly. I mean, who knows, right? So these are things that you have to consider when you're looking at your conversion rate. Now let's look at some numbers from other sites. So OmniConvert.com reports a good e-commerce conversion rate is between 1% and 4%. Okay, that's a good gauge right there, 1% and 4%. per crow, whatever, .com, 2.63% average. I think that was in 2020 for them, because dynamicyield.com did a 3.31% average globally. That I know was, I say I know, but I think it was a 2020 year. Then eRank said 2.9% average globally, but they had a 2019 number. And if with the pandemic, 2020, 2021 and forward is probably slightly higher than it was in the past. But look at these numbers are still between 1 and 4%. And eRank said Etsy shops average between 1 and 5%. Okay. Now, littledata.io, which is for Shopify, they said good Shopify conversion rates are 3.3% and higher. Again, between that 1 and 4%. And this is based on sites using this resource to improve their sites. So that number, that 3.3% number, is probably a little on the high side, because these are people who are like, oh, right, I'm making sales, I'm doing stuff, I'm adding this in so I could figure out how to improve my conversions. And there's plenty of Shopify sites that aren't doing that, right? There's plenty of Shopify sites that are getting good sales and higher that, but that 1 to 4% is still probably pretty spot on. Now, here's some numbers for my Etsy shop. Now, I did Etsy because we're still kind of building Merchlet, so we don't have enough data for that. And all my other websites are shut down. I've been selling exclusively on marketplaces for a while. Now, a quick note on that. Marketplaces are different than your own website. And we talked about this. You don't have control of the type of traffic, so it's easy to get bad traffic and a lower percent. Plus, it's a marketplace, so buyer intent is already there, which means they should be more ready to buy, which is why these numbers don't make sense to me and how I know that Etsy has changed something. So if you look here, this is this month, right? March 1st through March 26th, and this was 5 hours ago. There actually had another sale come in, so my orders would be higher. But I've had 3,735 visits to my entire shop, so multiple listings. I have over 1,000 listings. Right. So really, is this 3,735 statistically significant? I don't know, because I have to look and see if it represents any specific products. But at 1.7% conversion rate. Now, it's kind of out of season for my products, so that's pretty good. But I'm a little concerned that it's been increasingly going down over time, which, again, I can go back to all those variables and go through. Here's this one for this year since January, right? Again, similar. So I haven't really changed much, 1.8 to 1.7%, and only at 10.9 thousand visits. I've had 199 orders. So that gives me a 1.8% conversion rate. Then we go to, this one is last year, right? Now look at this, 1.8 to 2.4. Again, I'm not overly concerned. The entire year was 2.4%. So I'm like, and I know towards the end of the year is when we saw our percentages start to drop. And that's how I look at, this is going to be all time as a conversion rate of 3%. And I go and look at 100,000 visits. That's a pretty good number, 100,000. And as my views have dropped significantly as competition has increased massively on Etsy, right? Especially in what I'm selling. So 2.4%, this is all between the 1 and 4%, but I'm seeing a downward trend. My best guess at this is the two elements that we talked about. One is traffic. I'm not getting quality traffic because Etsy's bringing in people from weird places now. And the second thing is competition. I have a ton of competition. They're pricing things lower than I can purchase them for, right? And so I'm a reseller of craft products. So it's going to be, I mean, there's just massive competition. These people are losing money just to get customers, and I'm not going to do that. So that's something that part of that is get me off onto my own site, and then I won't have as much competition. That's one way to control that, by the way. Now, a question we also get is, can you get higher conversion rates? And yes, absolutely you can, right? You go through those elements, you look for ways to improve, and you improve on them. A lot of that is something you do. If you're getting started, you don't need to worry about that yet. And the whole topic of that would be for another video. But one holiday season, this was like before the pandemic. Okay, this is pre-pandemic. So one of my products on Amazon had a 50% conversion rate selling during Christmas, right? So between like November and December, I think it was, because prior to that, it didn't. But that means 1 out of every 2 people that saw that listing made a purchase. And I was making a lot of purchases every day because it was one of my best products. And it was fulfilled by Amazon and a bunch of other factors. So again, Amazon has its own conversion stuff as well. But it's just interesting to know 50% conversion rate on Amazon is amazing. In fact, I don't think you can get much better than that. So, but again, that's uncommon. That's extremely uncommon. But think about that. If you're driving traffic, if you are honing your traffic and you fine-tuned every element you can, you have a high demand product, you could get a 50% conversion rate even on your own website, right? Just really, I mean, it just depends on matching everything up. It's not easy to do. In fact, it wasn't easy for me to do. I got lucky. I had low competition. I had a good product priced well, and I was still able to make a good profit and do a lot of sales that year. It was really nice. Unfortunately, we've shut down that part of the business, so I don't have the product to do that anymore. But maybe someday in the future, right? Now, website conversion rates are misleading. Again, if you were having one product doing all of the sales, then your website could have a normal conversion rate. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing a 4% conversion rate. But 99% of your products that are listed aren't selling. So you need to look at more than just the conversion rate. Okay, I want you to understand that. We're not going to go dive into that, but I just want you to understand that. You can't look at your conversion rate alone. You have to look at other elements to help you understand what that conversion rate means. Okay, because if you have a 2, 3, 4% conversion rate, but only a handful of your products are selling, you need to find out why. And you can increase your overall conversion rate by getting more products to sell, right? If that's what your concern is. So those are just numbers for you to understand. Again, none of this is follow it. It's written in stone. It's all flexible and variable. But now you know, right? Now, what questions do you have about e-commerce and or conversion rates? Let me know in the comments. And follow the channel for more business tips. I do post regularly, and I also do a live Q&A each week. Check the channel banner for details because I'm talking about changing that time. So by the time you're watching this, who knows what it'll be. So just check the channel banner and you'll know then. And thanks for listening.